If you are between the ages of 75 and 85, and you can still do what I am about to show you in the next few minutes, then I need you to understand something important biologically speaking. You are standing in the rarest 1% of people your age on this entire planet. I'm Dr. William, and in 35 years of clinical practice, I have watched thousands of patients walk through my door believing that decline after 75 is simply inevitable, that it is written into their genes, that it is their fate. I am here to tell you today that this is one of the most damaging myths in modern medicine. Aging is not a sentence. It is not a countdown. You are powerless to interrupt. What separates the frail from the vibrant at this stage of life is not luck, and it is not genetics alone. It is a set of measurable, physical, and cognitive markers that your body is quietly reporting to you every single day, if you know how to listen. Most physicians never take the time to explain these markers to their patients in a 15-minute appointment. So today, I am going to walk you through 6 simple, science-backed checkpoints, things your body should still be able to do right now, and I want you to check yourself against each one as we go. These are not arbitrary fitness goals. Each one of them is drawn from peer-reviewed research, and each one is a window into what is happening deep inside your muscles, your brain, and your cardiovascular system. Some of what I share with you today may be uncomfortable to hear. You may discover that 1, 2, or even 3 of these checkpoints are harder for you than you expected. If that is you, please do not panic, and please do not turn this video off. Because for every checkpoint I show you, I am also going to give you a safe, practical way to start rebuilding that capacity, starting today. The body you have at 75, at 80, even at 85, has far more capacity for repair and adaptation than you were ever taught to believe. But that hope only becomes real when you take action on what you learn. So stay with me, because the next few minutes could genuinely change how many more years you get to spend independent, sharp, and steady on your feet. Let's begin with the first checkpoint, and I want you to actually try this one later today, carefully, near a wall or a countertop. Can you stand on one leg, unassisted, for at least 10 seconds? It sounds almost too simple to matter, doesn't it? But in 2022, a study published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine followed more than 1,700 adults between the ages of 51 and 75 for an average of 7 years, and what they found should stop you in your tracks. Individuals who were unable to balance on one leg for 10 seconds had an 84% higher risk of death from any cause over that follow-up period compared to those who could. 84%. That is not a small correlation. That is one of the strongest predictors of mortality risk we have found in a test that takes less time than boiling an egg. Now, why would something as simple as balance predict something as serious as survival? Here is the mechanism. Standing on one leg requires your cerebellum, your inner ear's vestibular system, and thousands of tiny sensors in your ankles, knees, and hips called proprioceptors to communicate instantly and continuously, correcting your posture dozens of times per second without you ever consciously thinking about it. When this system starts to decline, it is often one of the very first signs of neurological and musculoskeletal aging long before you'd notice it in daily life. And here's the danger this creates downstream: falls. A fall in your 70s or 80s is rarely just a bruise. It is often the single event that triggers hospitalization, loss of independence, and a cascade of health decline that follows. So this test isn't really about balance for its own sake. It's an early warning system for your entire neuromuscular network. Now, I want you to try this safely. Stand facing a wall or next to a sturdy countertop, close enough that you can catch yourself instantly if needed. Lift one foot slightly off the ground and try to hold that position. If 10 seconds feels impossible right now, that is completely fine. Start with 3 seconds, 3 times a day. And I promise you, within a matter of weeks, your nervous system will begin to relearn this skill. This is not about being an athlete. This is about protecting the very foundation that keeps you upright, independent, and safe for years to come. Now let's move to the second checkpoint, and this one involves nothing more than an ordinary chair sitting in your living room right now. Can you sit down and stand back up 5 times in a row without using your hands or your arms to push yourself up? This is called the sit-to-stand test, and it is used in clinics around the world, including at institutions like Mayo Clinic, as a quick, reliable measure of lower body strength in older adults. Here is why this matters so much more than most people realize. Your quadriceps, the large muscles at the front of your thighs, and your glutes, the muscles of your hips, are not just about mobility. They are directly tied to what researchers call all-cause mortality, meaning your risk of death from any cause whatsoever. And here's the mechanism behind that connection. After the age of 60, the average adult loses somewhere between 1 and 2% of their muscle mass every single year, a process called sarcopenia. This isn't just cosmetic muscle loss. Your leg muscles are metabolically active tissue. They help regulate your blood sugar. They support your balance system we just talked about. And critically, they determine whether you can catch yourself before a fall becomes a fracture or get up off the floor if you do fall. Patients who lose the ability to rise from a chair without using their hands are very often on a trajectory toward frailty, and frailty is one of the strongest predictors we have of hospitalization and loss of independence in the years that follow. Now, here is your practical path forward, and I call this the chair squat progression. If standing up 5 times without your hands feels difficult or unsafe right now, do not force it. Start by using your hands to assist, and with each week, try to rely on them a little less, letting your legs do more of the work. Practice 3 sets 3 times a week, lowering yourself down slowly and with control rather than simply dropping into the seat, because that slow, controlled lowering is where much of the strength building actually happens. Give this 8 to 12 weeks of consistency, and I promise you, most of my patients are shocked. Let's move now to the third checkpoint, and this one is about your brain just as much as it is about your legs. Can you walk briskly, continuously, for 30 minutes at a pace where you could still hold a conversation, but you could not comfortably sing a song? Researchers call this the talk test, and it is a simple way to gauge what's known as moderate intensity exercise without needing a heart rate monitor or any special equipment. Now, why does this particular pace matter so much? Here is the mechanism, and I find this one genuinely remarkable. When you walk briskly, your muscles and your brain release a protein called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. I like to describe BDNF to my patients as fertilizer for the brain. It supports the growth of new neurons, it strengthens the connections between existing ones, and it is especially active in a region called the hippocampus, which happens to be the very same region responsible for memory formation and the very same region that begins deteriorating first in Alzheimer's disease. At the same time, brisk walking increases cerebral blood flow, delivering more oxygen and nutrients to brain tissue that, in a sedentary lifestyle, would otherwise be gradually starved of both. Research out of Harvard School of Public Health has linked consistent, moderate-intensity walking to a significantly reduced risk of developing dementia. And I want to be clear with you, this isn't about running marathons at 75. It is specifically this moderate, sustainable pace that produces these protective effects. Walking too slowly does not create the same physiological demand, and walking to complete exhaustion isn't necessary either, and can even work against you if it isn't something your body is currently conditioned for. So here is your practical path forward. Use the talk test to find your right pace, and if 30 continuous minutes feels out of reach today, that is perfectly fine. Begin with 10 minutes, 5 days a week, and add a few minutes every week as your endurance builds. What matters most is not how far you go on day 1. What matters is that you are consistently asking your brain and your cardiovascular system to rise to this moderate challenge week after week, because that consistency is precisely what rebuilds the resilience we are talking about. Now let's talk about the fourth checkpoint, and this is one that most people completely overlook because it seems so unrelated to serious disease. Can you grip a jar lid firmly and open it without struggling, without needing to run it under hot water first, without having to ask someone else to do it for you? I want you to pay close attention to this one because grip strength has quietly become one of the most powerful biomarkers we have in all of medicine for predicting long-term health. The evidence for this comes from the PURE study, the prospective urban-rural epidemiology study, which followed nearly 140,000 people across 17 countries. What the researchers found was striking grip strength predicted risk of death, heart attack, and stroke more accurately than systolic blood pressure, the very number your doctor measures at almost every single appointment. For every 5 kilogram decrease in grip strength, researchers observed roughly a 17% increase in cardiovascular mortality risk. Now, why would the strength in your hand tell us anything about your heart? Here is the mechanism. Grip strength is not really a measurement of your hands at all. It is a reflection of your total body's muscle quality, your neuromuscular coordination, and importantly, the health of your vascular system, since strong, well-perfused muscle tissue depends on efficient blood flow all the way down to the smallest capillaries in your fingers. When grip strength declines, it is very often one of the earliest visible signs that this same decline is happening throughout your entire muscular and cardiovascular system, well before it shows up in a blood test or an EKG. So think of your grip as an early messenger, quietly reporting on things happening much deeper inside your body. Now, here is your practical path forward, and I call this the tennis ball squeeze protocol. Take a simple tennis ball, or any softball you have at home, and squeeze it firmly in one hand for a count of 3, then release. Do this 10 times per hand, resting 30 seconds between each set, 3 sets per hand, once a day. This small daily practice, done consistently, has helped many of my patients regain the confidence to open their own jars, carry their own groceries, and hold their grandchildren's hands a little more firmly without even thinking twice about it. Let's move now to the 5th checkpoint, and this one happens while you're not even conscious, which is exactly why so many people underestimate how important it is. Can you fall asleep within about 20 minutes of lying down and stay asleep for roughly 7 uninterrupted hours? I want you to think of your brain as having its own overnight cleaning crew, one that only clocks in when you are in deep, uninterrupted sleep. This system is called the glymphatic system, and it was only properly discovered and understood within the last 15 years or so, which is part of why so few people, including many physicians of an older generation, were ever taught about it. Here is what it does. During deep, slow-wave sleep, the space between your brain cells actually expands, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to flow through and physically flush out metabolic waste products that have built up during the day. Among the most important of these waste products are beta amyloid and tau proteins, the very same proteins that clump together to form the plaques and tangles associated with Alzheimer's disease. Research out of the University of Rochester has shown that even a single night of insufficient deep sleep can measurably increase beta amyloid accumulation in the brain. So when I have a patient who is only sleeping 4 or 5 fragmented hours a night, year after year, I am genuinely concerned because their brain's nightly cleaning crew is simply not getting the time it needs to finish the job. This is not a minor comfort issue. This is a direct pathway to long-term cognitive risk. Now, here is your practical evening protocol, and I want you to try this exactly as I describe it. First, stop drinking fluids after 7 in the evening to reduce the chance of waking for a bathroom trip during your deepest sleep cycles. Second, consider magnesium glycinate, a well-tolerated form of magnesium that supports the nervous system's transition into deep sleep. Please discuss the appropriate dose with your own physician, especially if you are managing kidney function or taking other medications. And third, keep your bedroom cool, somewhere around 65 to 67 degrees Fahrenheit, because your core body temperature needs to drop slightly in order to initiate and sustain deep sleep. Small changes applied consistently every single night give your brain's cleaning crew exactly what it needs to do its job properly. Now let's move to the sixth and final checkpoint, and this one takes place entirely inside your mind. I want you to imagine I hand you three completely unrelated words right now. Let's say apple, table, and honesty. I ask you to remember them, and then I distract you for 5 minutes with ordinary conversation, no rehearsing the words on purpose. Can you recall all three clearly at the end of those 5 minutes? This simple exercise is actually a shortened version of what neurologists call the mini-cog assessment, and it shares core components with the mini mental state examination, two of the most widely used cognitive screening tools in clinical medicine today. We use tools like this specifically to identify what is called mild cognitive impairment, often long before it would ever show up as a noticeable problem in daily conversation. Here is the mechanism behind why this particular task is so revealing. Holding onto unrelated information for several minutes without being able to rely on context or association to help you remember it depends heavily on a small, seahorse-shaped structure deep in your brain called the hippocampus. And here is what makes this so important to understand. The hippocampus is very often the very first region of the brain affected in the early stages of Alzheimer's disease, well before other areas are involved. This means that struggling with this kind of short-term recall isn't simply getting older, and it also isn't something to panic over from a single test, but it is absolutely something worth tracking over time. So here is your practical path forward. I want you to make the 3-word recall test a small daily habit. Each morning, pick 3 unrelated words, go about your normal routine for 5 minutes, and then try to recall them. And alongside this daily mental exercise, I want you to pair it with what researchers call the MIND diet. Specifically, its 3 most brain protective foods. First, leafy green vegetables. Aim for at least 6 servings a week. Spinach, kale, and collard greens are excellent choices. Second, berries. At least twice a week because they are rich in compounds called flavonoids that appear to slow cognitive decline. And third, extra virgin olive oil, used as your primary cooking and dressing oil in place of other fats because of its rich concentration of protective antioxidant compounds. Your hippocampus quite literally responds to what you feed it, both mentally and nutritionally. So let's bring this all together, because I don't want you to walk away from this video simply remembering 6 isolated facts. I want you to understand the deeper truth underneath all of them. Every single checkpoint we covered today, your balance, your leg strength, your endurance, your grip, your sleep, and your memory, they are all connected by one underlying principle from the science of epigenetics, and it's a principle that genuinely changes how I practice medicine after 35 years. Your genes are not a fixed sentence handed down at birth. They are more like a set of dials. And your daily choices, the way you move, the way you eat, the way you sleep, are constantly turning those dials up or down, switching certain genes related to inflammation and cellular aging on, and switching others off. This is why I tell my patients again and again that aging is not a sentence. It is a series of daily choices made consistently over time. So here is what I want you to actually do, starting today, not someday. First, pick just one of the 6 checkpoints we covered, the one that felt the hardest for you, and commit to its practical exercise for the next 2 weeks. Nothing more ambitious than that. Second, share this video with someone you love who is in the same season of life, a parent, a sibling, an old friend, Because sometimes the people closest to us need permission to believe that decline isn't inevitable, and hearing it from you might be exactly what opens that door for them. And third, I want you to comment below and tell me honestly, out of the 6 checkpoints we walked through today, how many can you still do right now this week? I read these comments and I want to know where you're starting from, because that number is not a judgment on you. It is simply your starting line. You deserve every bit of effort it takes to protect your independence, your memory, and your years ahead. I'm Dr. William, and I will see you in the next video. Take care of yourself and take care of the people you love.